Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the missing persons case of Jennifer Kesse, who has been missing since 2006, and she went missing, and when she went missing she was 24 years old at the time. Jennifer Joyce Kesse was born on the 20th of May in 1981 to parents Drew and Joyce in New Jersey, US. She had a brother called Logan and was just such a family-orientated girl. The whole family was just so close together and very tightly knit. Growing up, she always wanted to learn, and she just had this drive to expand her knowledge, and she did really well. She was very intelligent. She went to Vivian Gaither High School in Tampa, Florida, and attended University Central Florida in Orlando, and she graduated there with a degree in finance in 2003. She was a lively girl with all these big dreams, and she was always very energetic and super sharp. She was always very responsible, and there was just nothing seemingly wrong with her life. Everything was going so well for her, and she was doing well. She'd recently got promoted in a job as a project manager, which was a significant achievement for her at such a very young age. She was working at Central Florida's investments timeshare company in OC and recently bought a condominium in Orlando. Now, the area where she had bought this was still under construction. I don't believe it was the best of areas, but they were building all these new condos there, and all of those were still under construction, but I believe some of them had been built, and Jennifer's was one of them. And I think there was one more neighbour that she had that had also moved in. Their condominium was also finished. So she had like one neighbour and the rest were still under construction. She had a boyfriend who was called Rob Allen, who she had dated for around about a year, and he lived in Fort Lauderdale. According to her mother, they had this long distance relationship going on, where they would kind of meet up whenever they could, go out and see each other every weekend, do things together, things like that. They really, really loved each other so much. But obviously long distance can be difficult, especially when you want to be with somebody all the time and you just can't be. The weekend before Jennifer vanished, she had gone on a trip with her boyfriend to Virgin Islands. And it was just a short break. Again, they used to do it all the time over the weekends. They would spend time together because they didn't live together, so they go on the short break and they were due back on the Sunday. She stayed at her boyfriend's that night, and then on the Monday morning of the 23rd of January 2006, she drove straight to work from her boyfriend's. It was so that they could spend an extra night together. Again, they had to try and sort of grasp at time whenever they could, so the more time they got spent to each other, that is what they did. So she got to work. She was pretty tired because they'd had a busy weekend, and she was tired, and she was straight into work, straight back after it. But she did her work day and then left work at 6 p.m. She was on the phone to her dad at around 15:15 while she was driving home, telling him about a trip and just generally chatting to him. Then when she got home, I believe she spoke to her brother who had been house sitting for her. And I believe somewhere along the lines he asked her to send his phone because he had been over house sitting with some friends, and he'd actually left his phone there, so he wanted her to send it out to him. They chatted for a little bit, and then they ended their conversation too. Around about 10 o'clock, she ended up speaking to Rob, her boyfriend, and I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but apparently they ended up having a little bit of a disagreement over the long distance relationship. Like I said, they can be really difficult to make work, so they had a little bit of a tiff about that. And then whilst he was on the phone, he heard a knock at the door. He asked who that was, and she said, "Oh, it's probably my neighbour, I'm just going to ignore it," and she did. She then told him she was tired and that she was going to go to bed, so they say the good nights, and she ends the call. He was the last known person to speak with Jennifer before she vanished. So the next morning, Rob awaited his usual call from Jennifer that he got every single morning. They would either text or ring. Again, long distance is very hard. They contacted whenever they could. They spoke on the phone every single morning. It was like a routine for him at this point. Normally, while she was getting ready for work, she would bring him up. It was something she never failed to do. And on this morning, she never did it. He waited and waited, and she never rang. So he calls her to make sure that everything was okay. But it went straight to voicemail, and that is very odd for Jennifer because she would never let things go to voicemail. it was just totally out of character for her. Jennifer had told him about this meeting that she had at work, so I guess he was thinking along the lines of that maybe she had gone to this meeting early and that was why he couldn't get over her, that's why she didn't ring him, that's why her phone was going to voicemail, just something like that, that he'd try her again later. He did try her again later, but again, the phone went to voicemail. Then her parents get a call from her office at around 11 a.m. telling them that Jennifer had never turned up for work, and that was completely out of character for her. So much so that her work were worried about her and decided to ring her parents. It was just not like her at all. They tried to call her, and once more, they got voicemail, which shocked them again. Something that she never let it ring out to voicemail. She never put it on sort of message record, and that was the first time that she had done that. It just goes straight to voicemail, and you have to leave a message, and do something she never did. Panicking, worried that she's, there's something wrong, they begin their 2-hour journey down from Tampa to Orlando. They also call Rob to see if he knew where she was, and he pretty much tells them the same, that he's been trying to call her, that it's just gone to voicemail. He's not heard from her in the morning, not since last night. And again, they were really worried that, not even necessarily foul play, but that she was ill, that she had fallen and hurt herself, just something along those lines. Something that wasn't allowing her to answer the phone. They went and called the manager of her condominium to go inside her home and do like a welfare check, which he did, and called them to say that everything looked fine inside. Nothing, there was no mess, no broken anything, but that her cat had gone. They finally got there about 3 to 3:15 in the afternoon, and they found evidence that she had in fact been there that morning. So it's not like after she had spoken to her boyfriend that night is when she went missing, because in the morning they found like the shower was still wet, there was a towel that was still wet that she'd used to dry herself after the shower on the side, her makeup was open on the table, her nightshirt was on the floor where she normally chucked it after getting changed for work, she had some clothes laid out as if she couldn't actually decide on what she wanted to wear, so she put these clothes out and then picked her outfit from that and then left. Everything looked like she'd been there in the morning, got ready to go to work, left to go to work, but never actually got to work. They called the police, but because Jennifer was an adult, the police just initially, like normal, thought, oh, she's left of her own accord, there's no need to be too worried about it, yada yada yada. She wasn't classed as a missing person initially, but she would be declared as missing later on. The police organised search parties, the family organised search parties. They were spreading the news, trying to get her into the media as soon as possible, because the media and the public play such important, vital roles in these kinds of cases. Because if they have seen her, or they have seen somebody with her, something happen to her, then they can come forward and let us know. So they are vital in these cases, and they wanted to get her name out there ASAP. Police went out on searches on horseback, helicopters, but again, at that time they did still believe that she had gone off on her own accord, that she had had this argument with her boyfriend about the long distance relationship, and that she just wanted to go as a result of that and cool off. Even though Rob had said that it wasn't really an argument, it was just a bit of a tiff really, there was nothing serious about it. Needless to say, they couldn't find her. They really did think that she would come back, and they never cordoned off her house or anything like that, and so they got a lot of flack for that later on when she was missing and never came back. They apparently weren't very cooperative with the family, nothing like that, so they did get a lot of flack in this case. And rightly so as well. Jennifer was missing and they just did nothing to try and... Well, they searched for her, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, but what if her house was a crime scene? They didn't cordon it off. They truly believed that she would come back, and she just never did. Then 2 days later, on the 26th of Jan, the police found a black Chevy in Malibu that belonged to Jennifer. It was Jennifer's car. Now, a tenant from a nearby complex had actually seen the car on the news, so they'd finally been spreading awareness and things over the media. Like I said, they're so important in these cases. They had seen that car, recognised it as Jennifer's, and reported it as being there. They said that it had been sat there abandoned for days. And it was 1 mile away from Jennifer's apartment. At the time, police hoped that this car would provide some vital new leads in her case. Unfortunately, it did not. They found nothing. The car was untouched. Nobody had stolen anything from it. They didn't find any evidence in it or anything like that. So it was just another sort of dead end, unfortunately. Police did find one thing though. They found CCTV camera footage of somebody pulling up in Jennifer's car, parking it, and then getting out and walking away. That person was not Jennifer. They sat in the car, I believe, 30 seconds before they left. Now, you may think, great, we have CCTV footage of the person that is driving Jennifer's car around. Maybe that's the person that took her. Well, yeah, this camera footage took like a still, I guess, every sort of couple of seconds. So it's not fluid. So you've got this person walking down, sort of stills of him there, and then jumping, skipping forward. There's a fence post blocking the way, so you can't see the face. They couldn't even see, again, the gender of this person. It could have been a male, could have been a female, it could have been either. The police did try and contact the FBI for help with the footage, but again, they weren't even able to determine the gender. What they did determine was that this person was between 5'3" and 5'5". Now, Jennifer was quite, taller than that. She was 5'7". And what they did find was that her car's seat had been pushed back way past what she would have even done. And this person was smaller than her, so either they did it to make it look like somebody taller had been driving, or maybe in an attempt to try and make it look like Jennifer had been driving it and simply pushed it back too far. Or, like me, I sit very close to the steering wheel because my legs are super short. So I sit very close to the steering wheel, and sometimes when I'm getting out, I push my seat back further than what I can drive it at. So maybe that is what they did. Maybe they just shoved the chair back without thinking and then left. It could have been that too. They found valuables in the car. As I said, there was no robbery or anything. It made them believe that that wasn't the motive. Honestly, they did everything they could to try and find something. They brought in sniffer dogs. They caught Jennifer's scent, but all it did was lead right back to her condo, which made the police believe that the car had gone from the condo to straight where it was found, because that is what the dogs led them to believe. They did a forensic search of the car. They didn't really find anything. They just got this latent print of DNA, like a small DNA fiber, which I believe didn't lead anywhere, and investigators assumed that the car had probably been wiped down. Again, her phone was off, so they couldn't track anything to do with that. Her banks had not been used since she'd gone missing. There was just nothing. Police began investigating family members, boyfriend, like they normally do, those closest to him. He had a very strong alibi. He also took a polygraph and was eliminated from their investigation as a suspect. There was apparently an ex-partner that they did start to question when they found out that he was upset that the relationship had ended. They did look into him quite a lot, but again, he was eliminated as a suspect. Her family then began looking into the goings-on around the condo. As I've said, there was a lot of work going on there, a lot of construction work. There was workers in and out all the time. And they found out that apparently she had told some friends and some family members that the workers were kind of hassling her. Well, not necessarily hassling her. I guess they made her feel very uncomfortable, like wolf whistling at her and talking about her in like a sexual way in Spanish. A lot of these workers were from different countries, so they were talking about her in Spanish and things like that, but she actually knew Spanish, so she could understand what they were saying. And it just generally made her feel uneasy. And Jennifer was very much a woman with personal safety in mind. She kept a spray on her keys. She was always sort of aware and conscientious of those around her and possible dangers that may be around her. Even to the point where when some men had to work in her condo, she would stand there watching them by the door to make sure she saw everything that they did. She would make sure that the keys were on her when they were inside her home so that they couldn't swipe them. She just watched them just in case. That's how sort of conscientious she was. But then when the workers found out about the police investigation, most of them vanished. It's probably thought because maybe immigration records, or maybe they just didn't want to be involved with the police at all, so they just left. The workers that remained, a lot of them spoke obviously Spanish and didn't really speak English, and there was a lot of translation issues with that side of it and things like that. Police began looking into other areas too. They began looking into people who worked with Jennifer and workplace relations and things like that. This is when they found out that a manager was actually romantically interested in Jennifer. But Jennifer didn't believe in workplace relations and she rebuffed him. So they looked into him a lot, but eventually he was ruled out as a suspect too. Unfortunately, they haven't found anything on her. On the 2nd of May in 2008, the Florida House of Representatives passed Senate Bill 502, which was the Jennifer Kesse and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act. This was to reform how missing persons cases were handled in Florida. As of the 10th of June in 2010, the FBI did take over her case from the Orlando Police Department. The latest search for her took place in February of 2014, and investigators continue to pursue leads and receive tips, just try and find out what happened to Jennifer. In 2018, Drew and Joyce actually went ahead and sued the Orlando Police Department for all records to date in their daughter's case. They were really frustrated by how the police had handled the investigation, and they demanded that the files be released to them. They had a legal battle that was unprecedented in a missing persons case. Like, nobody had ever fought to get all of the records so that they could look into it themselves, essentially. They did reach an agreement, and her parents received about 16,000 pages of records, I believe. And they continue to look into their daughter's disappearance. As recently as 2020, 15 years after she'd gone missing, new photos of her car have been released to the public. I'll show you these photos. It claimed there was, it looks like there was a violent struggle that had taken place on her bonnet, like by the dust and stuff you can see and how it's smeared. I'll show you the pictures. I believe they believe that somebody was pushed onto it and then dragged down or something like that. Her family do believe that Jennifer is still alive and hope that one day they will see her again. And that is what everybody hopes, obviously. And I just hope that with them now getting these records and, I don't know, maybe pushing it and putting it in the public eye some more, maybe getting some private investigators, whatever they need to do, it looks like they will do, that hopefully it will lead to something. Maybe somebody will come forward with some information. If you know anything whatsoever, please come forward, because her family just want to know what happened to her and where she is. She just went missing on her way to work one day and she's not been seen since. It's just insane. I really hope that her case is one day solved, and obviously my heart goes out to her family. I hope that they do keep, which it seems that they are doing and they will do, keep pushing and trying to find out what happened to her. But for now, her case remains unsolved. That is the end of this one. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Jennifer Kesse. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.